They had me fill out the questionnaire to see if you have postpartum depression. I filled it out. She comes back into the room and she's, Sarah, you have pretty extreme postpartum depression. What's going on here? And I was like, I want to kill myself. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
The world is obsessed with fast track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Sara Mauskopf is the CEO and co-founder of Winnie, a leading marketplace for daycare and preschool, which helps millions of parents across the United States. Parents use Winnie to discover high-quality local daycares and preschools and learn about programs including detailed descriptions, photos, tuition information, licensing status, availability data, and more. Child care providers use Winnie to get the tools and support to grow their business. Sara has a background in consumer technology and product management and is also a mom of 3 young children. Sara, good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Why don't we start the podcast off by having you share about what you're doing in your work today?
So I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Winnie. It is a child care marketplace. So we're really focused on helping parents find daycare, preschool, and now things like summer camps and other kinds of care and education for their kids. And I've been at this now for 8 years, which is a crazy thing to say. It still feels like I started the company yesterday, but
Pre-COVID too, which for me
Yeah.
was really important. I just had a lot of thoughts about, I wonder how much this spiked during COVID.
Yeah, it was a wild ride. It's
Yeah,
still
we could go into that.
still every day. It's an existential threat to the business, but we're still at it 8 years later. And if you need childcare, go to winnie.com.
When you reflect on your childhood, is there any instance or theme that pops up for you, good, bad, indifferent, that took place that kind of ties into your career?
If you ask my parents, I've always been a pretty serious person, even as a child. Like my mom said, from the moment I was born, like she never talked to me like I was a baby, like she did with my brother, but like an adult, because I was always so serious about everything. And I think that is true. Like I took everything very seriously from a young age. I was very conscientious and had to get perfect grades and
Mm.
kind of everything I approached, I felt like it was very important and that if I didn't do it perfectly, something terrible was going to happen. And that really didn't come from my parents at all. It was like this innate internal feeling. And I still feel that way to some extent, but I've learned over the years that things can go wrong and it's
Mhm.
okay.
And did that bring a feeling of satisfaction or a feeling of anxiety?
It was both. I have both a lot of anxiety and a lot of pride and satisfaction in my work. I remember teachers would always say, Sarah, you're going to burn out if you keep going at this speed and you keep worrying so much. And there were moments when I burned out, but that's just my personality, like just always really
Right.
caring, taking things seriously. I'm not a laid back, calm person. I never have been. I can't be. I don't, that's not in my DNA. And
At
it's
least
just,
you're
I'm
self-aware.
just other people couldn't be like this. My husband is a very calm person and relaxed, and that's why we get along. But I am never, there's never a moment in my life where I really feel calm.
Mm. I think it's also interesting for people to give you that kind of advice, like as if you can just turn it on or off, dial it back, dial it up. I'm a person of extremes, and my husband and I have a lot of conversations about this. And it's like, how do I not? How do I change this about myself? I just don't know how. It's who I am. To your point, this is me. And I feel like you can only do so much therapy to change yourself, but the threads are still within you.
What I've learned is I can't project that anxiety and drivenness on other people. And I have to keep a lot of it to myself. If I try to make other people as anxious or work as hard as I am, they're just going to freak out and not like me, but it's okay for me to do it because that's what drives me. And I like planning
When
things.
did you learn that piece?
When I realized the impact I was having on other people, especially when you manage other people, whether
Fascinating.
that is my team at work or my family, I
Yeah.
realize I can be really anxious and plan out everything that's going to happen and figure everything out. But I have to, when I present that, just share the tip of the iceberg.
I'm curious if you have a story or experience that comes to mind when you think about this and when you're thinking about the aha of this is what I do and this is a me thing. I can't expect others to be me and that you were doing that. Did something come to mind for you?
That's a good question. In school, I was voted most likely to study for the SATs after I got into college. And I got really upset. I was really hurt by that. And I actually had them remove me. So if you look at the high school yearbook, I am not the person who won that because I refuse to have that superlative associated with me. But I think that was a moment for me when I realized like other people know just how hardcore I am, and I don't like that. I wanna give off more of an image of I'm more chill, like, I only studied for the SATs a little bit. And so I realized I don't have to let everyone know exactly what I'm doing for everything. I can tell people I'm studying, but have them think I'm just studying a normal amount and not an obsessive amount to get the best possible score I can get on the SATs. So that is one that stood out in my mind of, I am letting people know how extreme I am with everything, and I don't
But
necessarily have to if that's gonna upset me.
sorry to interrupt, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time with this though, because how is it that something you're doing for yourself is affecting others so much that, like in that example, that you, oh, well, I mean, I guess you don't want your name like that in the yearbook, and that totally makes sense.
I
But
think
this feels
people
like
get
another people's
competitive,
problem, not your problem.
but I can make people really nervous, and I see this too, even with my kids. If I tell another parent, like, I've already figured out all the summer camps we're doing, that can make them really nervous and anxious because they haven't
Hmm.
figured out the summer camps for their kid. And so I
And they
have
feel
to approach
inferior.
it
Hmm.
in a way that is helpful and say, "Oh, I'm starting to look at summer camps. Here's one I saw that I might be signing my child up for. Are you interested in this?" And that I've just seen the way people respond when I can give it to them a
Wow.
little bit softer and less, "Here's the spreadsheet I made."
Do you
Uh,
feel like you're not able to be your full authentic self?
no, I can be my full authentic self with myself. I can do all that, but I have to, when I approach other people, make sure I don't overwhelm them. And I just found that gets me more of what I'm looking for, which are friends and
Okay.
good responses from people
Yeah.
and people actually engaging.
Yeah.
And so, I think the lesson I've taken away is you have to present things to people in a way that they can hear them and understand them. I do
Yeah.
a lot of sales now in my job, and I think that's just a really important life skill. I wish I had developed it sooner than
Mhm.
my late 30s, learning how to talk to people and sell to people.
Yeah, you have to meet them where they're at. You're incredibly self-aware, which I have found that not everyone is self-aware. Have you always been this self-aware? Do you realize that you're self-aware?
One of the amazing things about having kids, and I have 3 of them, is you see these traits in their, like, rawest form, and not that your kids are gonna come out exactly like you, and genetics are weird and interesting, but in some cases, genetics are really weird.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
oh my god, this is me before I learned how to control this and harness it. And when you see it in someone else in that way, it's, like, really striking, and having my own children are the first time I could see it raw
Oh,
and
wow.
un
That resonates so much. I too have 3 kids. You start to really self-examine and you're like, what am I putting out that they're picking up on and now they are this way? Are they this way because of me or because of other external factors? Or is this just how they're built? And until you said that, I don't think I realized how much I really sit and reflect on that.
and having 3 of them too.
I
And
know they're
two
so
at once, and
different.
to be like, It might just be something they picked up from what I'm doing. Then you're like, no, this happened. Oh boy, this was something, this is a strong genetic trait
Yeah.
I have passed on to all of them.
I'd like to fast forward. What thoughts were you having as you were trying to shape what your adulthood would be like? Were you feeling pressure? What did that look like for you?
Never for a millisecond did I think, should I go to college? That was always a given. Of course, you go to college next and you try to get into the absolute best college you can possibly get into. So that drove me from early on. I remember now kids think about it even earlier, but for me, like the beginning of high school, I started thinking about college and that was like unheard of back in my day.
Yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
start thinking about it that early. But I always knew I was going to go to college because that's what good students did in my
Yeah.
mind.
And you ended up getting into MIT.
Yeah, I got into MIT, which was one of my top choices. I met with this friend of my mom's who was obviously older than me, was my mom's age, who had gone to MIT. And he said to me, MIT is really hard. I don't think you're going to like it there. You do a lot of work and it's not very fun. And for some reason, I just really took that as a challenge. I was like, I'm going to MIT now.
Oh, you saw my reaction. My mouth, like my
And
jaw
I don't
dropped, and
think
I
he
was
meant
like,
it in probably in some ways he saw me as like a young girl and was like, this girl is not cut out for this. But I think in other ways, like MIT was really hard and it probably was really hard for him and it probably wasn't very much fun. So I think he was also being honest that if I have these choices and some of these other schools might be more fun, maybe choose the fun one. But for me, I was like, I'm choosing MIT now.
yeah. I mean, that immediately, I felt the fire in my belly to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna show you. And that wasn't even my story.
Oh.
Wow, that's fascinating. What was it like looking for as you were approaching graduation?
MIT offered this fifth year where you could stay a fifth year and get your master's in computer science if like you automatically got accepted if your grades were good. And I was originally going to do that, but I got so burnt out towards the end of my time at MIT. I guess I finally burned out like all the teachers said I would. I was so obsessed with getting straight A's, and I had done that all through high school and all through college, and I was like, "I can't stay another year. What if I get a B? That will ruin me. It'll ruin my streak." And I think also I realized I had a sickness at that point. The fact that I was going to give up a great education because I was afraid of getting a B on a whim, apply to Google. They came to MIT to recruit, and I decided to show up to the interviews and they offered me a job. And I heard they were in California, which sounded really glamorous and warm and relaxing. Spoiler alert, but they're in Northern California where I live, which is not super warm.
Yeah, the
Whatever.
Bay Area
Uh,
is a tricky situation when it comes to.
but in my head, it just sounded really awesome. I had moved to California and I took the job.
You spent quite a few years there. What was the learning curve like going from being in education and converting into the workplace? Did you have any struggles?
It was like the most like someone had dumped a bucket of ice cold water over my head. I had always excelled in school. Like I said, I was a straight A student. I was obsessive and I thought I would get to a job and be incredible too. And the thing about a job, especially at Google, is you're just dumped into this role and you're expected to contribute and make an impact and help out. And it wasn't like, here are the assignments, and then you're going to study for
Mm.
the test and get a grade. It was like, here's some vague area that you're going to help with. Go make yourself valuable. And by the way, there's a bunch of other people at this organization, and you have to work with them and see how you can help them. And everyone's going to be vying and jockeying for a position. And I really struggled. I joined in this rotational program that I think they understood. The people that join really need to learn how to work. But it was shocking to me. And I saw some of my peers who also started in this program, and some of them had a couple years of work experience under their belt. And they just knew what to do. They just started building tools and helping out and creating reports that were useful to other team members. And I would look at them and I would be like, how did you know to do that? Like, how'd you come up with that idea? And that's when I started to learn that muscle where like you just have to figure out where you're going to add value and then start doing those things. And no one is really going to tell you what to do in a
Mm.
job in the same way that, they did at school.
How did it feel during that time when you're going home at night and, you're still in that state of shock of, wait a minute, I've done so well at school.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing here. How did that manifest when you went home at night?
I lost myself for a little bit there. I was failing in everything. I wasn't excelling in my job, and I was seeing my peers figure it out and excel.
Mhm.
I wasn't really sure who my friends were and where I fit in. I did really struggle. And then the second year, I decided at least I'm going to move closer to work. I started out living in San Francisco and working at Google all the way down in Mountain
Oh,
View
wow.
because I didn't understand how far those things were. So I decided at least let me move closer to work. Let me figure out how to do this job thing. And I'm not going to focus on the social life. I moved into an apartment all by myself from living with two other girls in San Francisco and trying to meet people. And I ended up starting to get the hang of how to work and how to add value. And little by little, I could see, okay, this person did this report and it was useful. I'm going to do the exact same thing in some other area. I just started copying what other people were doing that was proving successful. And I think by just focusing on the one thing, it helped. Like, I found myself and my identity and what I could be good at, and that also helped with the social life too, because I started to feel more confident.
You started as partner technology manager, and then you looks transitioned over to the YouTube side of
Yeah,
things.
so the starting title was associate technology manager. It was like this rotation program, and
Mhm.
then you get promoted into the role. So that was like partner technology manager, and you find the area that you want to rotate into for life. So that was YouTube for
Got
me.
it.
And that's also where I met my husband, which was a big contributor to feeling like I was starting to get secure in life. And I remember he's 6.5 years older than me. So he was more established. He had a kind of higher role in the organization. And there was one meeting that we would attend together, and everyone else that was in the meeting treated it as a joke, but he took me really seriously. And I was leading the meeting, and he would listen and he would contribute. I remember thinking like, okay, I want to marry that guy. And also I'm starting to feel like good about myself because I can lead a meeting and
Wow.
this guy will pay attention and take me seriously. So I had my eye on him long before he knew that I was targeting him to lock him into marriage and 3 kids.
And did you end up dating while you both were at Google?
We did. And then he told me he wasn't ready for a serious relationship. And I'm like, dude, you're ready. You're 6.5 years older than me. And so I went ahead and dated other people. And then a year later, I was like, all right, are you ready now?
You asked him if he
And then
was
we
ready?
got engaged and married shortly after. So it was fast, but we were still working together at the time when we started a relationship.
Were you still working together after you were, I'll call it a break. This feels very Ross and Rachel, but while you were in a break and you
Yeah.
were dating others, were you still working together?
Yeah. And we remained friends, like,
Oh.
because I wasn't really that crushed when he told me, like, I'm not ready for a serious relationship. I just didn't believe him. I was like, no, I'm a catch.
Good
You're
for
ready.
you.
You will be ready at some point. And I liked him as a friend. We're both Jewish, and I just felt he's not going to have a lot of options for Jewish girls. So I just
Amazing.
knew, like, he's going to come back.
What I love is this story at Google started with you being, I'm paraphrasing, but insecure, not knowing where you fit in, and then migrates to you being so confident about what you can offer a partner. That is so fantastic.
Yeah, I think the reason I was insecure was more like had always been so confident,
Yeah,
like
of
so
course.
serious, so confident. I've always excelled. And the minute I didn't, I was like, what is happening?
It's
Something's going
identity
wrong
crisis.
in the universe.
Yeah.
So it was maybe less insecurity and more like confusion. This isn't right. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be a winner.
Yeah. Just you needed to find your way in a new environment. What was the thing that took you away from Google and took you to Twitter?
A few people I worked with at Google that I had really respected and were like dominating at Google started working for Twitter. And I was a user of Twitter and we would all use it and I was an early adopter. And then I saw them go get the job there and I was like so jealous. I was like, oh my God, they're so cool. They not only, killed it at Google, but then they got this job at this startup that I'm obsessed with. I really want to work there too. So I tried to get a job at Twitter and they referred me and there were like two different jobs that I didn't get at Twitter. And then a third job came up and I was like, I will do anything. I just want to work for Twitter. And that one was not as in demand and I got it. I was actually able to like very quickly within Twitter work my way into the job I'd really wanted. Like within less than a year. It was fine anyway, but I'm so glad that I just was so willing to be like, I want to do anything to work there.
Did you have feelings though after you'd taken the job that wasn't as desirable, that maybe you had made a bad choice or you didn't feel fulfilled?
My parents were like, "What the heck are you doing? You have this great job at Google." Google was a very well-known
Yeah.
company, really prestigious to work there. And I had gone from MIT to Google, and my parents would wear the gear and brag about me and how amazing I was. And to like their friends, I was like some tech genius, like having a computer science degree at MIT and working for
Yeah.
Google. And then they were like, Twitter, what's that? That gave me a little bit of doubt, but I knew I really wanted to work there. Like in any job, I would have been willing to be the janitor. So I was pretty excited.
What challenges did you experience during your time at Twitter?
So Twitter was like the lost feeling lost at Google was like nothing in comparison to going to Twitter and no one knew anything that they were supposed to do. It was growing so quickly and the roles were way more ambiguous than at Google, where it's a well-oiled machine in comparison. So it was even more of that, what the hell am I supposed to do here?
And why did you end up leaving Twitter?
So I was at Twitter for 4 years. I saw it grow from 200 employees to thousands, and it IPO'd in my time there. I was fortunate to have some stock options that actually ended up being worth a little bit of money at the end of that 4 years, which is rare when you go to a startup. And I wanted a new challenge. And I also thought in my mind, every startup must be a rocket ship. I should go find the next one and go do it there. So I was like, what's the new product I'm obsessed with? And it was Postmates, which I was a big user. It was huge in San Francisco where I lived, where you could get all your food and anything delivered very quickly. And so that was like the new cool startup for me that I wanted to go work at. And again, I was like I want to work there at all costs. But I also got a bigger role offered to me there where I was going to be the head of product. So instead of just being a product manager with a small team, I would run the product management team. And so that was like a no brainer that I'm going to get this bigger opportunity at a startup that I thought was going to be the next Twitter.
When you took that role, was it as challenging as you expected taking on that leadership role?
So I was at Postmates a year before I became a parent. And I would say, like, when I joined, it was, of course, every job is different once you join and never really know what you're getting into, but it was an early stage startup. And I felt, okay, this is different. I've never worked at a company this early before, but I can do it. And I felt good and I was working hard. And it was a hard job.
How many employees did they have at that time?
Oh, they had probably like 50 or 100, but a lot
Okay.
of the employees were support staff.
Yep.
So there was not that many on the core kind of product and engineering team,
Okay.
maybe 25 kind of on the product engineering
Yep.
growth. The biggest shock to me was how hard I had to work. The nature of the Postmates business is was really busy nights, weekends, Friday nights,
Holidays.
and that's when everything would break from like the product
Yeah.
and engineering perspective. So if we launched a new feature, it would get really used Friday night. And that was fine for a year because I had no responsibilities other than being pregnant. And I had 3 relatively easy pregnancies. So I didn't of course, I felt big and tired, but I could hang. And we were in the office. We would come in on the weekends. We'd come in, we'd be there late at night sometimes. It was hard, but I was doing it. I was keeping
Yeah.
up. And then after having a baby, that was like the moment where I realized this is about to change in a big way for me, in a way I didn't anticipate before having a child.
Did you take leave and you realized that before you came back from leave, or did you realize it when you came back immediately, or?
So I did not realize before giving birth how it was going to change for me. I was like, I'll get a nanny and I'll have childcare and I'll just hop this baby out. I'll see the baby when I didn't realize what it meant to be a parent. Just had no concept
Yeah, you don't know
when
till
the
you know.
baby came
Yeah.
out. And once my daughter was born, I was like, oh my God, how the hell am I going to do this? I took 6 weeks of leave, and then I went back to work. I stopped breastfeeding the day before I went back to work. I was like, "I'm done. Cold turkey, I'm done," because I could not manage anything else. It was too much, and I tried to make it work. Like, I had this nanny, and I tried to get home by I had the nanny till, like, 7 p.m. I was like, "I'm gonna make it work, and I'm gonna be hardcore." Um, and I quickly realized, like, this is not how I wanna be spending my time. I was failing in all areas.
How did that the stress of all that manifest for you? Was it physical, mental, all of the above?
I was really depressed at the beginning, about having a child. I had postpartum depression when she was first born, and then I'm not sure what I had after, but I felt like I had made a huge mistake having a child at all. I was like, "What have I ruined my life, and there's no going back now, and I've just ruined it." So that was a big feeling for me, but I also felt maybe this is just not what's important to me anymore. Maybe working at Postmates is not what I care about, and what if I started working on something that would really impact my life and make it better and make my life worth living again. So I had this extreme view that life was not worth living anymore. So I was like, at least I can work on something that would help me and maybe make an impact on my life. So I felt like the very least I should be working on something that would help parents in some way. And I didn't know what, but I knew if I worked on something that would help parents, at least I'm like making a contribution. Because I had felt like the time being a parent was, like, the worst thing I'd done to myself ever. And that I definitely probably had some, like, real depression because that's not a normal reaction, and I didn't feel that way after my other 2 kids, and I definitely don't feel that way now. Being a parent is the greatest thing to ever have happened to me, but at the time, I really felt like my life was over.
What
Like
specifically brought those feelings to be?
I felt so locked into this new reality. I didn't have any freedom anymore. I couldn't do what
Mm.
I wanted. Getting married didn't feel that way at all. I still very much could do whatever I wanted. I could stay out late. I could not be home. I could not tell my husband. We just had we really were individuals leading our own lives and we
Yeah.
loved each other, but we didn't he was traveling a lot, I was working a lot. We didn't feel like we owed each other any time or anything. We would just spend time together when we wanted to. And having a child was the first time that I really owed someone my time. It wasn't my time anymore. And I think breastfeeding really compounded it for me. So there was a big moment of relief when I stopped breastfeeding. And ironically, I breastfed my other two kids for 2 years each. I ended up loving breastfeeding. At the time, it was so restrictive for me. I didn't feel like I had every 2 hours I was thinking about how I was going to feed the baby, how I was going to get back to my house or get to a place to pump. It felt like my life was so incredibly scheduled and
Yeah.
regimented, and I had no moment to even think about myself. And that was just such a crazy transition from the last 30 years of all time belonging to me, and I could do whatever the hell I wanted, to go to not having even a second where I could think about myself.
You said you took 6 weeks. I'm curious, like, how much you thought about giving up breastfeeding before returning. Was it like a last minute decision, or had you been thinking about it for quite a while leading up to returning?
So I think it was like a 6 it was right before I went back to work. I had a checkup with my OB, like the standard
Yeah.
postpartum checkup. They
Yeah.
had me fill out the questionnaire to see if you have postpartum depression. I filled it out. She comes back into the room and she's, "Sarah, you have pretty extreme postpartum depression. What's going on here?" And I was like, "I want to kill myself. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." And I had an OB that was like really no fuss. And she's, "Stop the breastfeeding. This is not helping you. Like, you have to stop immediately. And if you're not doing better, come back. Like, you need help. But let's see if this fixes you." And so I was like, okay, she told me I have to stop. I'm stopping. And it did help a lot. I probably could have benefited from some medication, but I didn't end up taking any medication or needing that. It just helped me snap out of it a little bit. And going back to work, I handed the baby off to the nanny. I went into the office and I started to feel like myself again a little
Sure.
bit. A lot of people are like, 6 weeks, it's so soon. For me, like, any more time, I don't know if I'd
You
still be
needed
alive
that.
today because I
Yeah.
needed to get out and get away from and establish an identity that was separate from
Yeah. I
being a
can
mom.
I can completely see that. Did you a lot of judgment from family and friends for those decisions?
No, I think everyone assumed, based on how hardcore I've always been, that I would go back to work. I think my mom, who was with me for those like 6 weeks and saw what a mess I was really relieved to see I was like functioning again and going back to work and able to move from wanting to kill myself to doing something. And I think everyone was just on kind of pins and needles. How is she going to move on and adjust to this? And then saw that I could go back to work. And that was like a good sign for everyone.
Yeah. I asked that question because there's just so much in society. Like, if you quit breastfeeding, if you're not breastfeeding, there's just a lot that comes with that. And in some ways we've evolved, and in a lot of ways we have not.
Yeah, I think I was so far gone, like, that
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure that I could. At moments, I thought, if I kill myself, my mom would be a better mother, and she'll raise Bryn with my
Mm.
husband, and they'll live together, and they'll raise Bryn. It wasn't rational. Of course, that would not have happened. My mom and my husband are not gonna live together
I
to
get
raise
it
my
though.
daughter.
Yeah.
But that was where my mind went. Wouldn't they be better raising my daughter together? So, I don't think I was even in the state of,
Yeah.
should I breastfeed? Should I bottle feed? Like, I was just trying to get back to, can I survive now as
Yeah.
a parent? And I think anyone who was around me during that time period saw what a fragile state I was in. So no one was pressuring me with, you should They were just like, you should be alive. That would be a good.
Were you talking about this fragile state with your immediate family and friends, or it was just they saw and they knew?
Definitely my mom and my husband saw, and I would talk to them and I would be like, "I
Yeah.
can't believe I did this. I can't believe I had a baby. That was a huge mistake." And then I didn't really see it. That was also a big thing. I didn't see anyone really during the beginning, which I think is a cultural norm. Like, you
Yeah.
cocoon in and you take care of this new baby. And I knew for my second two children, I can't do that. So the second two children, I was out of the hospital like the next day and I was doing things, even though I was
Yeah.
bleeding and
Yeah.
recovering, I was out. I went to restaurants, I saw friends, and people said that was crazy, but I needed that. I knew I could quickly
I did that
snap through
same exact
depression.
thing for myself, and I felt like I got so much judgment for being out and about. Your 3rd baby is how many days old? 3. You're going out to eat? It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I want to do this for myself. It's gonna make me feel normal, and why am I getting judged for taking care of myself?
yeah. It
People
was
can't help themselves.
yeah.
You said you were at Postmates about a year, and then you had your daughter. And then what did the remaining time there's only about 6 months-ish remaining.
So after I had my daughter, I forgot to mention this important part, which is there was one other person I talked to, which is this random woman at work, Ann Halsell. Spoiler alert, she's now my co-founder at Winnie. But she joined Postmates shortly after I went on maternity leave. So we only had a week of overlap. She was a mom of 2 young kids. And after I had Bryn and I was really struggling. I remember like at one point she just reached out and she was like, "Congrats, how are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm doing really bad."
You're like, "Honestly, not
Um,
good."
and she was like just this random person who seemed really not judgmental and someone I immediately felt connected to. I don't know why. And she just started talking to me. And I remember I told her, like, I'm really struggling with breastfeeding. And she gave me some advice on how to pump and breastfeed. And I was like, oh, thanks. I didn't know that. And then when I got back to Postmates, I really gravitated towards her. And we just started talking more and working together more. I didn't have really a lot of or any mom friends. I really bonded with her and our conversation naturally evolved to what are we doing here at Postmates? We should do something together, start a company. And the rest is really history. But she was a person I confided in and really
Mhm.
felt like I could trust. And now we've been co founders for over 8 years. My instincts were right with her.
What drew the 2 of you to finally pull the trigger?
I should mention she's a genius. And when she got excited about the idea of starting a company with me, I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to start a
Mm.
company with this genius person who, for some reason, wants to work with me. And so that alone felt really exciting. And we both wanted to build something for parents. And we both were really overwhelmed by the kind of working hours and work life balance at Postmates because she had 2 young kids. I had this new baby. And we were like, we can do this differently. We don't have to kill ourselves in terms of the hours we put in. We're really talented. We could probably do it in less hours. And so it was all of those factors combined that we were like, let's just quit and start this thing.
What challenges did you encounter as you started your venture?
So the beginning was really fun. We were like we got a room in someone else's office. We were working together. Like I said, the hours were good because we could make our own hours. We knew we could survive without a salary for a little bit. And then investors got wind of us working together and were like, we want to invest in your company. And we were like, huh, okay, we should take this money. And that's when things got more serious. We hired a couple employees. And then a few months later, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And that's when everything started crumbling down in my world. I
Mm.
had a new baby. So Bryn at the time was 6 months old. I had just gotten in the swing of working and doing things. Actually, she was probably around 6 months when Eric started getting sick. When he was diagnosed, she was probably 9 months old at that time. We had just raised money. So I didn't feel like I could shut down the company and just stop because we had hired employees and we had investors and people were counting on us. It went from being like, this is so much fun, I'm living the dream, to holy crap, my world is ending. My husband has a really serious form of cancer. I have a new baby. What the hell am I going to do? And I was definitely it in quite a bit of shock at that point.
How did you manage all of that?
When Eric was first diagnosed, one of the biggest things was like figuring out what kind of cancer he had to get him on the right treatment plan. And there were a few different hospitals. Their pathology departments disagreed.
Oh,
So I felt, okay, in terms of priorities, my priority is saving his life. And so I put everything else on the back burner. I took time away from Winnie, and my mom, thank God, flew out and ended up living with us for like over 6 months. She took a leave of
mm,
absence from her job, and I just focused on Eric and figuring out what kind of cancer he had. There was a point where I was driving his tonsils from one pathology lab to another, had actual tonsils in the car. So he ended up having lymphoma, but figuring out what kind of lymphoma, diffuse large B cell, that determines what kind of chemo you get. And they're very different kinds of chemo and very different treatment plans depending on what kind of cancer you have. But we finally figured it out and got a treatment plan and figured out which hospital was going to treat him. There were a few different options in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's UCSF, there's Stanford, there's other smaller hospitals. And so it's great to have a lot of options, but you got to figure out who you're going
yeah.
to go with and trust. And so when we finally got that all in place, that was when the really hard moments began for him because he had to start chemo and that was really difficult. But for me, that was actually the easier moments because it was like, okay, we have a plan. Now he has to go through the hard stuff, but I can start getting back to work. And so I started signing back in at work. My mom was with us, and I could not have done it without her because even with having a nanny, I had to take him to the emergency room sometimes in the middle of the night. And so, unless you have another caretaker, and my mom raised my daughter for those 6 months, I would see her and I would be her mom, but I was not responsible for her. My mom was, and she was the real backstop and the one thinking about her constantly. And that is what enabled me to focus on Eric and focus on working.
That seems incredibly stressful.
It was very stressful. Thank God he ended up, you know, going into remission and he's still in remission today. So that's great. And it's been 7 years. Every year that goes by, more hope that it's not
Yeah.
gonna return. And he got through a really tough treatment. But I think the thing I learned about the kind of cancer he had is the 5-year survival rate for his kind of cancer. It's not great, but that's because the kind of lymphoma he has, like typically it's older men in like their 70s that get it. So they can't withstand the like really tough chemo that you have to go through. So
Mhm.
they usually end up dying like from the treatment, not necessarily from the cancer. So he was able to get a really strong regimen of chemo and hopefully put the cancer into remission for life and survive that chemo because he was 37 when he got this
Mm,
cancer as opposed to 70. So that was
wow.
good news. Eric, he was barely functioning. He had different kinds of chemo are different. And so some people work when they're receiving chemo and they feel relatively okay. He had a kind that he actually had attached to him through an intravenous drip. So for the whole week, he would have a drip of chemo in a bag. Some people have to stay in the hospital to get that, but he actually got to take a bag of chemo home that he would
Wow.
have and sleep with and be with for the week, and then did that every 3 weeks. He had to repeat. So he was that really takes everything out of you. He at points, they thought he would need a feeding tube because he couldn't eat. So he was not it was everything to just get him out of bed. He was not in any kind of state to work or do anything.
And your daughter was young enough that she didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, we will look back at pictures and she has absolutely no recollection of anything. She was like by the time she was 1.5, like, he was done with
Yeah,
chemo
wow.
and on the road to recovery.
Is that time blurry for you as a parent looking back? Like with her growing up?
Yeah, I feel like I missed out. Maybe this is the reason I have 2 other kids is I didn't do baby years for Bryn. Between me being so depressed in the beginning to then as soon
Yeah.
as I started feeling better, Eric getting sick, it wasn't till she was 1.5 or 2 that I really experienced her and like the joys of parenting. And I remember I bought like a baby carrier, like the one you put on your body when she was like almost 2 years old. And I put her in it, and it was like one that was supposed to be for toddlers. And she was huge. And I'm tiny, I'm 5'2".
Oh,
But I loved that thing because it was like the first time I got to like experience that. I had missed the whole like
oh,
phase of when you hold your baby. And I think that's also part of the reason why, like, for my other 2 kids, I breastfed them each for 2 years, and
sure.
I did all of the things, but I
Making
really
up for lost
missed out
time.
on that.
Yeah.
But life is long, and she's 8.5 now, and we are incredibly close, and she's
Yeah.
really special to me, so I've made up for lost time, but,
Yeah.
I definitely, like, that whole year and a half was a complete blur, and I don't even know what I did as a mother for her.
I asked some intimate probing questions, but this one just really feels like none of my business. But I have to ask, how did you decide to have more children? Like what brought you the confidence both from what you had experienced
Yeah.
and from like still your husband coming out of it, but still being a question mark?
It is an intimate question, but, one I love to tell people about because I feel like I'm doing a service to other people who may be experiencing cancer in the future. Before my husband started his chemo treatment, he froze his sperm, and this was a thing that was not on my radar at all. It was actually a friend I had from high school. He had cancer, and his wife somehow got connected to me. She reached out and said, "You have to freeze his sperm." And I said, "No, like,
Like
the
what?
doctor said we don't need to. Sperm regenerates, and also, like, I don't even know if I wanna have more kids, like,
Yeah.
I might be good with one anyway." So and plus, he had to get into treatment right away. He had a pretty aggressive cancer.
Mm,
So I was so focused on just saving his life. I was like, "We are not wasting any time." But she actually gave me the number for UCSF's reproductive center and said, "Just call them, they will get you in tomorrow. Like, just say he has cancer. There's no wait list, there's no anything." So I called them, they got me in the next day, they got him in the next day. They made it so easy. You
mhm.
get to skip the line if you have cancer, so all these
Oh,
wait lists and
wow.
things, so we froze his sperm, we actually got to freeze 2 batches of it, and turned out he didn't have any sperm after the treatment. Everything
Oh, that
functions
gave me a
properly,
chill.
but the semen doesn't contain any sperm in it. We only do
God.
that after
Thank God to that friend.
yeah, that was an amazing thing, and I always like to tell people, I think there's a misconception about men's reproductive systems.
Yes.
It is so easy to freeze sperm, it's not like freezing eggs. There's no wait time, you don't have to create them, you don't have to harvest them, so everyone should do it who has cancer that is of reproductive age. Plus, it's a lot cheaper, a lot of insurance will also cover it, and
Wow.
cancer, so, like, really, please do that. And then after he started getting better, I really just really felt a strong urge to have another child. Like, I felt like I wanted to reclaim our life, like, it had been taken from us,
Mm.
and that wasn't fair, and I wanted a normal life again, and I wanted Bryn to have a sibling. I just really felt like this was a chance for me to take control. And so we tried to have a second child. That's when it wasn't working, we went to get tested and realized that was the issue. Thankfully, we had frozen the sperm, so we did IVF to have my daughter Aubrey.
It's amazing. What was the experience like following Aubrey's entry into the world and comparison to how you had managed with Bryn?
It was like night and day. With Aubrey, one, I had my own company, so I had set everything up
Mm.
to work for what I knew I would need. So I knew I would want to come back to work right away. And so I actually built like a little lactation booth in the office so I could pump at work. And I knew I wanted to try breastfeeding again because I had such a horrible experience the first time. I wanted to give it another go. So I actually took breastfeeding classes. I was the only second-time mom that has ever taken those classes. And they were like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "No, I want to get it right this time. I want to study for the exam."
You want to go back to your youth and be that student.
Yeah. And I also think like kids are just different. Aubrey was like just a really easy baby. She knew she had to be. I brought her everywhere with me, and it was just like a real like redemption tour for my first experience having a baby.
Wow, that's amazing. Aside from the personal aspect of things, what challenges have you had as a co-founder, having your own business in that journey with Winnie?
There have been like a few different existential moments in our time. One actually came shortly before I had Aubrey. I was very pregnant and we were running out of money and needed to raise another round of funding. And no one wanted to fund us. Like we had hundreds of investors say no to us. And it was this moment where I was like, oh shit, I'm about to have this baby. I know that I'm probably not going to be like in peak fundraising mode after giving birth. I could work, but I could go out and fundraise probably.
Roadshowed, yeah.
And we had the nanny at home that suddenly became really bad. Something had flipped with her. She was a great nanny, and then I think she had some of her own problems. So we had to part ways with her. So we didn't have childcare. And so I went to Eric and I was like, what are we going to do? Should I just stop with Winnie? I gave it a good go. Maybe it's time to give back whatever money is left over and just end this. And I can stay home with the baby and with Bryn. And then he had gone back to work at Google after cancer, but was back to his like job of he had to travel everywhere. So he started looking internally within Google at different roles where he wouldn't have to travel and just ended up like it was Google is a really intense place and it was a lot of work. And so he was having a moment of maybe I should quit, but he earned a lot more money than I did. And my company was maybe going to go out of business. So we were just like, oh my God, what do we do here? And it just fell out of the sky that we had an investor that wanted to lead our next round, our seed round. So of all those hundreds of no's, like we finally got our yes. And I remember I was on the phone with someone from Reach Capital when I thought it was going to be a rejection call, and they ended up saying they wanted to lead the round. And I just felt myself starting to cry.
You're
I
like,
was
what?
"Oh
Say
my
it
God."
again. Say it again.
I was like, I can't believe this actually happened. The moment I thought that everything was over, we got an offer. And of course, you have to keep your cool because you don't want them to know that Eric rejected you. And you actually have no other offers. I'm like, yes, I will look at that term sheet and make a decision. But I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to take whatever they offered. Eric ended up stepping back from his job, starting as a leave of absence, but then ultimately he just quit. So he had gotten Google has a very generous paternity leave. So he was like, let's test the waters here. But then he quit after 12 years at Google or something crazy.
Wow.
He was a stay-at-home dad for the first 4 years of Aubrey's life. And so anyway, everything fell into place. But there was like a month before that where I was like, oh, we're running out of money and no one's going to invest and you don't like your job and we don't have a nanny and everything was crashing down.
Wow. Stressful. Is there anything that we haven't discussed throughout your career that you feel like is relevant as it relates to the premise of the podcast?
I think there have been many kind of like micro moments, whether it's like a day or a week or just different points when I have felt like it's all over. Like I'm done. Like everything I worked for, somehow now I've failed. And I think looking back, it's easy to say those were like, of course I was going to get over that. And those were not existential threats to my life. But at the time, like so many of those moments, like whether it's a product launch that just goes horribly wrong or I screwed something up. Like at the moment, there were so many times where I felt like how am I going to recover? How am I going to get back into it tomorrow and live another day? And I think now I've built that muscle where I know, of course, nothing can happen where unless I'm dead, I'm getting up tomorrow and I'm going to do it. But at the time, it's so hard to know that it's going to work out
Yeah.
in some way.
Especially when you look around and you start comparing yourself, it's just a spiral.
Yes,
I have some rapid fire questions.
let's do it.
How do you define success?
So now I define success as the happiness of my family and myself, I think, and the health. I hit so many other forms of success, whether it's achieving career goals or certain amount of money I want to make. And I realize like none of that matters if you don't have your health and your happiness. And if your kids don't have their health and their happiness and your husband doesn't have their health and their happiness. So that's really my number one focus and priority now.
What would you say is your path not taken?
I think stand-up comedian, if I could go back and do anything, I work my bits in my spare time.
Have you done it on the side?
I have not, and it doesn't make any money. So that would be a big deterrent for me. And it takes time. But I feel like, especially now, I have a lot of good stuff around motherhood and being a tech founder that I could
Have
definitely
you haven't put that into the universe at all yet?
I put it into the universe a little bit on Twitter. That's where I kind of tweet my stupid quips. But I have some bits here that I could actually put together. A different lifetime, a different path that I get to be a stand-up comedian.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
Challenging, fun, and maybe unexpected.
How is stress most typically manifested for you?
When I get really stressed, I just end up eating a lot, which is a really bad habit. So I'm trying to do more physical activity when I'm feeling stressed and go for a run or even just a walk.
What is the company on your resume that turns the most heads?
Now it's Twitter because of all the drama with it. You can't even call it Twitter.
Yeah, I know you can't call it Twitter. I'd love for you to take 3 labels and apply them to 3 jobs. Love, ultimate fun, skip.
I love my job as a mom. Ultimate fun, I would say, is Winnie. I mean, I have never done a job this long. It's been over 8 years, and I believe it will be another decade, and at least. And I would be really happy if this was all I do for the rest of my life is continue to build this thing. There have been so many hard moments, but I wouldn't be doing this still if this wasn't the best thing I could possibly be doing with my time. Skip? I don't know, probably like one of the dumb internships I did. Like I did a summer as an actuary and it was so boring. Realized I don't want to be an actuary. No offense to any actuaries out there, but it's just not for me. But I guess it helped me learn what I don't want to do.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reiner. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and/or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.